I know it's not fun to wake up and find your money gone just like that, but America will face its largest financial crisis ever in just 15 years from now, and your income taxes could actually double. I want to show you why and introduce how you can keep your money. Should increase, so we see an increase in income tax. In 15 years, our nation will only have 2.2 workers per retiree. That's because a quarter of our population, known as baby boomers, retire. Now you do the math. Currently, these entitlement counts are at zero. So where's the money to pay for these benefits going to come from? In 1960, there was 5.1 workers to support each Social Security beneficiary, so a small payroll tax was sufficient. And back then, there was no Medicare. Well, those days are gone. This chart woke me up. It's created by David Walker, who served under 3 U.S. presidents as Comptroller General of the United States. That's the nation's chief accountant. This chart was in a movie that he helped produce called IOUSA, which I highly recommend. It shows our nation's history of debt in relation to the GDP. Look in the center and you'll see that until now, our toughest moment was during World War II, when the debt reached 122% of GDP. Of course, the top marginal income tax rate then was 90%. Now look to the far right and see where we're heading. Our unfunded entitlements drive us to an unsustainable debt level that's well over 350% of GDP. Do you really think that we can get there without your income taxes soaring? President Obama recently said, "This is unsustainable. We can't just keep on borrowing from China." We are becoming increasingly reliant on other countries to fund our entitlements. Back in 1990, only 19% of our debt was funded by foreigners. But by 2008, that number has grown to almost half. This has significant political ramifications. The question is, will China and others fund our debt? And the other question is, can they? Can they fund that much debt? Some think that our primary problem is defense spending. As high as it is, defense spending is down as a percentage of total federal spending from 46% in 1968 to 21% in 2008. But during that same time period, Medicare and Medicaid spending went from 4% to 20%. Social Security grew from 13% to 21%. It's just going to get worse, a lot worse. You should have been warned about this long before the last market decline by your advisor. The message couldn't be clearer. Back in 2001, the President's Commission to Strengthen Social Security stated the current system is financially unsustainable. And without reform, the promise of Social Security to future retirees cannot be met without eventual resort to cut benefits, tax increases, or massive borrowing. The time to act is now. Now that was back in 2001. Then in 2003, David Walker told the Senate that Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid represent an unsustainable burden on future generations. That same year, the U.S. Office of Management and Budget stated that these long-run budget projections show clearly that the budget is on an unsustainable path. And as the baby boomers reach retirement age, deficits would drive debt to levels several times the size of GDP. This, by the way, is the same year that our government added Medicare Part D. That's the prescription drug program without any way to fund it. In 2004, Alan Greenspan, as the Federal Reserve Chairman, said to Congress that this dramatic demographic change is certain to place enormous demands on the nation's resources, demands we will almost surely be unable to meet unless action is taken. Yet with all those warnings, in less than a decade, we've seen our debt and unfunded obligations grow over 300%, from 20 trillion in 2000 to over 63 trillion today. David Walker says that these numbers don't take into account what the Fed has been up to, nor the 5 trillion recently guaranteed by the Treasury to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So he sees that our taxes could actually double in the next 20 years. Double. What tax rate will you have to pay in retirement? Are you still excited about qualified plans? Instead of trying to minimize your taxes today, perhaps you should consider minimizing your income tax during retirement. Time wrote, "Why it's time to retire the 401k." I'd like to add another reason in addition to the fact that your retirement money is exposed to market risk. When you delay paying taxes today, what you're really doing is procrastinating paying a tax. You run the risk of paying a much higher tax in retirement for the reasons I've stated. And most or all of your deductions, like house payments and kids in the house, they're usually gone when you retire. I'm personally frustrated with popular financial personalities, people like Susie Orman, who despite all the warnings we've had, despite the stock market crash, the warnings by the government, they still see no problem with putting future retirement dollars at risk in the market and being fully exposed to taxes in retirement. This money, of course, is also fully exposed to estate taxes at death. When you die, your money is divided into two piles. One pile for the government, which gets paid first, and then another pile for your heirs. Here's an exception to the rule: life insurance. The death benefit gets passed to the beneficiary tax-free. Some types of permanent life insurance products provide the ability to build cash value which grows tax-deferred, and when managed correctly, you can pull money out tax-free. This is just an introduction to a solution. More discussion and disclosures are necessary since you can also incur a tax if you manage it incorrectly, and you should consult with your qualified tax professional. But don't miss the point. When managed correctly under current tax law, the money you put into life insurance policy has left the American tax system. Even more impressive, it can be kept out of that system from generation to generation by teaching your heirs to use the death benefit to pay for their premiums for life insurance, and when repeated generationally, it can grow perpetually outside of the American tax system. What I just explained is how you can create, keep, and pass along multi-generational wealth using life insurance, a strategy employed by the ultra-wealthy, but applicable now to any family that wants to protect their wallet from the next financial crisis.